2019 is the year I pledged to play through the Castlevania franchise and record my journey through these vlogs, culminating in one big video review at the end. Welcome to the second and final episode of Bloodstained Diaries, the spiritual successor to Castlevania Diaries. So after about a month and a half, I've finally beaten Bloodstained. It's not Curse of the Moon, Ritual of the Night. I think that's what it's called. I've beaten the story. I have not completed 100% of the map. I have not completed all of the quests because there's just too much. But there is a lot to unpack. And keep in mind, I've played this game now about a year after launch. I played on Nintendo Switch. So I've played the worst copy of this game as it's available multi-plat, and the Switch has the worst performance issues. Luckily, I played it at a time that there's been a lot of patches applied, and also right at the time when a new DLC, some free DLC has been released for the game. So I feel I've really experienced this at the best point that this game can offer, unless they keep patching it, because there is work. So let's talk about technical issues right away, because when Bloodstained was released, the Switch was, from what I heard, garbage. Some viewers were saying just like reading a book in the game caused the game to crash like 50% of the time. That's just crazy. When I played it, I think the game crashed once, and I put in somewhere between 10 to 15 hours. I'm not sure what caused the crash, but anyways, it wasn't an issue. The only real issue I experienced was when I had to go up the like the tower where there's the two-headed dragons. The frame rate there, like, just tanked. It was like playing 5-10 frames per second. It was bad. Luckily, that was pretty much the only time that the game really like slowed down and stuttered. Now, what's weird is the DLC lets you play as another character called Zangetsu, which is he's freaking badass. You got all this sword thing. Anyway, we're gonna talk about that in a moment. Him going through the tower, there's no frame rate issues at all. So I really don't understand how they made it smooth with Zangetsu, but they can't make it smooth with Miriam. So go figure. So when it comes to tech issues, there's a lot less. If you have the luxury of choosing this game on any platform, please do yourself a favor. Go on any other platform. Unless portability is very important to you, then go on the Switch. The issues are not that bad. There's, it's a small like 10-20 minute segment. You'll get over it. Now, how does this game compare to Castlevania? Because that's what the whole point of Bloodstained is. It's all about Iga not being with Konami, and I'm not going to pretend to know the whole history. I just know Castlevania has been dormant, and this is what people are getting. Curse of the Moon was fantastic, as you saw in my last Bloodstained Diary. Ritual of the Night clearly tries to emulate Symphony of the Night, and they have done a fantastic job at that. When you play the game, it feels like it feels like Symphony of the Night. Everything from collecting weapons, the movement, the map, everything's bigger. There's now quests added in, which I really like. Everything about it, it looks better depending on who you ask. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the 2.5D theme that they went for. It's there's like a lot of unnecessary effects and everything, like the whole background and all that, I feel takes away from what's going on at the foreground with you and the enemies. It didn't need to be so ridiculously technically, I don't know, like so much technical stuff. Like there's a lot of like lightning rendering. Like for example, there's a part of the game where you go underground into like a lava segment, and everything is radiating light and lava, and this is the background, the floor, and everything's just so bright. I can barely see the character, and much less the enemies, which are also fire, like elementals flying around a fire stage. That's a really bad design decision in my opinion. The art direction didn't need to do that, and I think it also caused a lot of the tech issues that surfaced in the game. So overall, simpler is better in this case. When it comes to combat, the combat is really good. You have a lot of choices in terms of what weapons you want to use, very much like Symphony of the Night. Here there's way more weapons to choose from. I was quite surprised. I'm a big fan of the sword because it's quick and you got good reach, and after a while I found a flying sword, which was my favorite thing because it had that range of the whip, which I really like. So you could throw your sword and it would have like a knockback potentially if you did it right on enemies. And I used that for a long time, but the downside was it was really weak. And as I got to the midpoint of the game, I couldn't take down bosses with it anymore. It was just ridiculously long boss fights. So I switched to the whip, which has a much bigger delay after you use it, but you can actually hit down and a little bit up. It has more of that like height range with it. And I realized that if I jump and whip, I can mobilize very quickly after the whip hit versus if you're just running and whip and then you have to wait for him to like, or wait for her to pull it back. So once I discovered that mechanic, I was like, oh, I really like the whipping mechanic. And then I also got the sword, which in Symphony of the Night, I forget what it's called. It's like Chrysigrim or something. It's the sword goes like, and you just kill everything. And it's the cheap sword. So I built that in this game, and it wasn't as powerful. It was a bit weaker, but still, towards the end of the game, like the last 10-15% of the game, it helped me get through everything much faster. So there's something for everyone. There's guns too. I don't use guns, but there's a lot of assortments to choose from, which I like. Let's talk about quests, because that's a whole new thing as well. So in terms of quests, there are 3 types. There are cooking quests where you have to feed an old lady a dish that she wants. There is kill certain monster quests to avenge random characters. And then there is the lady who wants to bury dead people, so she needs items to bury them or something. Those are your 3 quest lines that are like side quests. Good idea, weak execution. I was really hoping that it could have been integrated a little bit more than just being like really simple fetch quests. Like I said, I didn't finish them, so maybe there's a payoff in the end, but it didn't feel rewarding to do at all. I did a good chunk of them, but they weren't rewarding. The food one was probably the most rewarding, because then you actually got to learn the recipe. And eating food in this game, whenever you eat a new recipe, you learn, or you increase your stats permanently the first time you eat like macaroni and cheese or like a rice dish, whatever. So I like the food element of it, as you would probably imagine, as I have a food channel, Heiji Eats, go check it out. So I would have liked to have seen those quest lines maybe expanded more, maybe having those quest givers have their own story and have kind of like things happen. So you keep going back to a town where all your shops are and your quest givers are. And it would have been so cool if there would have been a little bit more building up. Like I'm a sucker for this stuff, when you can build up your town based on how much quests you finish. The most you get here is you can give a farmer seeds and the crops will grow. That's about it. But then you harvest the crops and they're gone. Or the lady that buries the dead, those quests, you get an extra like little tombstone in the background. It's nice, but it could have been so much more. Like imagine if every time you fed the old lady, she was motivated to like build out a kitchen, and your kitchen got bigger and fancier with more elements that you could explore and interact with. Or the lady who wants to avenge, I don't know, some kind of worship chamber turns more and more demonic. I don't know, but I feel there's so much that could have been done there to reward the player for quest progression. So that fell short of my expectations. Now, they've also added a whole crafting system to this game, again, which I love. I love crafting. It was a little bit intimidating at first. There's almost too much stuff to craft. You can craft foods, you can craft potions, you can craft all sorts of weapons, but crafting depends on the grinding for certain enemies, and it's not bad. Like once you get more comfortable with it, it's not too bad. But again, I didn't feel motivated to craft that many weapons, and some things are just really abstract. For example, I want to do macaroni and cheese and I needed monster milk. Where do you get monster milk? There is no way for me as a player to know where to get monster milk unless I go through the entire castle and I keep killing enemies randomly until a random drop tells me, oh, this enemy here drops monster milk. The only other advantage, or the only other way to do it, is to go on Google and figure it out that way. But I feel that a good game should be self-contained. Yes, there will always be walkthroughs, and walkthroughs were a big part of Castlevania in the past, but like, come on. We're in the internet age now. Don't make us use the internet. Put those mechanics in your game so it's self-contained and rewarding, and you want to keep the player playing in the game, not putting the game down to go look on Google how to do things. And I can't be bothered going around every type of enemy to find out what they drop. One simple way they could have gone around this is the first time you kill an enemy in your bestiary, you indicate what they drop. Like it's not hidden. You just say this type of enemy drops this, and maybe you even put the drop rate so that the player knows what they're getting into if they're going to farm it. That's not hard to do. Like, why hide that information from a player? It doesn't help. It doesn't make the game easier or anything. It just makes the game more fun, if anything. So yeah, the crafting system, good idea. Again, fell weak of my expectation. It could have been better. The story of the game, honestly, I didn't care for it. the characters, I didn't really care for it. Zangetsu's cool, Miriam's cool, Alfred is more of a dick in this game, and the vampire dude, who I forget, Jeeble or whatever, he's like, I don't really care. So in terms of the universe, I much prefer the Castlevania universe. I much prefer the Belmonts and the Dracula and that whole feud. Maybe it's because I've played like 20 games at this point, but I just couldn't really care about this. I did like that they kept the crystal element, which was, I think, inspired very much by Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. That's a cool mechanic. I like it. And for those who like to experiment, there's so much more there. The whole shard system is fantastic. That's something that they implemented well that I can't really knock them for. So you have your shards, you have different types of shards that give you different spells and abilities, and there's like 50 plus. And then the more shards that you have that stack, the more strong your abilities get, and then you even have your familiars in shard form that you can level up through fighting or through like through crafting your shard more, or through collecting more shards. That whole system, very well fleshed out, very well implemented. They did a good job there. The bosses, have I talked enough about story? I didn't care about the story. That's it. There's not much more to talk about. It does the job of just getting you motivated to like go through this castle, find the bad guy. That's about it. In terms of the bosses, I like talking about bosses. The bosses in this game were fun. They weren't overly difficult. They were challenging. I remember dying quite a few times to Zangetsu, and he was a good challenge. Like, I felt like as a player, I couldn't steamroll this guy. I had to level up as a player in my skills of controlling my character, and it was a really rewarding fight. Or like the Blood Lady, she was fun too. The very final boss was just all sorts of, what the hell are you doing? It was weird. It was not overly complicated. It was trying to be WoW for WoW's sake, and just ended up being kind of like, what are you doing? What are you doing here? What are all these heads? It's just like a spiral. So it was weird. And then what else did we have in this game that is of note? Pretty much, I think I covered all the main mechanics. Oh, the music. The music in this game. Wow, have they done a good job. Like, just when you open up the game and the title screen, I'm just like, wow, that's iconic. That's beautiful. I want to listen to this. And I feel I haven't had that experience in a Castlevania game in a while. And certainly didn't get it in Curse of the Moon. To be fair, though, that was just like 8-bit tunes, although Castlevania 1 was 8-bit tunes. That was really good. But yeah, the music here was really, really good. So they did a good job here. Overall, the game felt like there was a level of polish missing, though. I get it's an indie game, but I feel like when there's so many veterans on the team, it should have felt more polished. Like, it felt like a knockoff Castlevania, for better or for worse. It's not a game I would want to 100%. I'm not motivated to. Like Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night, I was motivated. It felt good to be in that world, and I wanted to play more of it. This one, there's something holding it back from like being great. It's like a solid good game, but it's being held back by something. There's just something that doesn't quite click for me. And I really wish it did, because there's so much to do in that game. That would be a game I would love to get on the PS4 and platinum run, because there's so much to collect. If it was just a little bit better, like at the end, and I know I tend to speedrun my Metroidvanias, but at the end, I was so underleveled. I spent a half hour grinding an enemy and just getting 10 levels, and so I could take on the final boss, and I'm just like, that shouldn't happen. Like, there should be a nice gradual curve, but I'll acknowledge that's probably more on me than on the game. So anyways, yeah, it's a good game. Not as great. I really look forward to getting back into the Castlevania franchise, because now my next games are going to be Metroidvanias on the DS, which are the final 2D Metroidvanias in the Castlevania franchise. So this is supposed to be the best of the best that Metroidvania has to offer, and really looking forward to seeing what that's all about. So anyways, I'll see you after I've completed the next one, which is Dawn of Sorrow, I believe. And until next time, keep it classy.